Chapter 383. The guards of honor stopped. Zhuzi, the young master of General He's family, is blocking the road. When Jingwan heard that, she snorted and looked at Li Hanyuan with ridicule. The young master of the He family truly loves a Yuan deeply. After all, other than him, there shouldn't be anyone else who would dare to block the carriage of the king of hell. Right? Is a Yuan not prepared to express anything? Li Hanyuan lazily glanced at Jingwan. Sorry, Ben Wang only wants to fight with his own Wang Fei. I don't have any interest in fighting with outsiders. Jingwan made an embarrassed face. What was it? Such a manly matter. How could he turn it into such a perverted thing? After the embarrassment was over, Jingwan coldly laughed. Wang, you can slowly fight by yourself. Ben Wang Fei has no interest in accompanying you. It doesn't matter if you fight on the bed or off the bed. Our Jin Qin Wang will definitely win. She reached out and lightly patted his face. Ben Wang Fei is quite optimistic about you. Work hard, Wang Yi. Perverted was perverted. Violent was violent. Who is afraid of who? I will definitely win under the bed. As to whether I can win on the bed, only Wang Fei will know. Li Hanyuan leaned close to Jingwan's ear and lowered his voice. He stuck out his tongue and licked Jingwan's earlobe. Wan, tell me, does this husband seem to have lost or won? He deliberately pulled out a seductive ending note. Jingwan couldn't help but tremble. She subconsciously slapped him. Speak properly. So easily breaking the rules. Li Hanyuan directly laughed out loud. Don't talk about slapping him away. His entire person hung onto Jingwan's body. Although Jingwan's physical fitness was much stronger than the majority of women, in Li Hongyuan's hands, she was still like a little chick. The people outside didn't receive any instructions from their masters for a long time and also didn't express anything. They just looked down and didn't say anything. Now, as long as the two masters were together in the carriage, they would habitually weaken their five senses, especially their hearing. They could always find a way to divert their attention. Because the situation in the carriage was usually poisonous. It was a group of young and vigorous men. Although the situation was special and their desires were lower than ordinary people, it didn't mean that they didn't have it. From time to time, they would be stimulated. Even a saint would get angry, so it was best to think of a way to isolate the situation. He Jihai came alone today and didn't ride a horse. Although he blocked the road, he didn't barge in. He was actually a little nervous. He was afraid that Jin Qin Wang would refuse. After all, if Qin Wang refused, he wouldn't dare to force. It wasn't because he was afraid of being beaten again, but because it would bring trouble to his family. Return to the Fu. Li Hanyuan opened his mouth. Because he had long prepared to properly train He Jihai. He wanted to turn him into a valiant general who could lead the army. This fight was definitely going to happen. Most likely, it would be more than once. He had to thoroughly beat this brat until he became obedient. Only then, it would be easier to deal with him in the future. It was just that now wasn't the time. He had to let He Jihai block the door again and again. When he was finally annoyed to the point that he couldn't stand, then he would make a move. Only then would he be able to block the conspiracy theories in some people's minds. Only then could his plan proceed smoothly. The guards of honor started to move forward again, ignoring Little Gangster, he who was standing in the middle. Little Gangster, he couldn't act like a tyrant anymore, so he could only obediently make way for them. Then, he looked at the guards of honor, leaving with a pitiful expression on his face. If someone didn't know what was going on, they would think that he was looking at a heartless person. Until the procession of honor disappeared from his sight. Little Bully, he dejectedly left, completely unable to raise his spirit. When he returned home, his family members saw his appearance and were fiercely shocked. Even if this brat's leg was broken, he could still jump up and down. All day long, he didn't have a single moment of rest. His energy was so good that it gave people a headache. To be honest, they really hadn't seen him like this before. Although He Jihai was a bully, the kind that gave the family an abnormal headache. When it was time to scold, he would scold, and when it was time to beat, he would beat. He absolutely wouldn't be lenient. However, towards this youngest child, he was still abnormally fond of him. At this time, he naturally expressed his concern, fearing that he would really encounter something. He Jihai scowled miserably. Jin Qin Wang ignored me. Those who didn't know would think that he was abandoned by Jin Wang and had an expression of being struck by lightning. And those who knew would also have an expression of being struck by lightning. This evil creature really foolishly went to block the door. The scene froze for a few breaths. Then, one by one, they flicked their sleeves and left. This kind of thing, it would be strange if Jin Wang paid attention to you. Hey, you guys don't go, listen to me, Jin Wang is too excessive. The procession of honor has stopped. I thought that he would have a good fight with me. Last time, we clearly agreed. How could he go back on his words? He Jihai chased this, chased that, catching people to complain. He was the youngest among the masters of the He family. When they were impatient, they all sent him a single word: scram. Go to the side that was cool and stay there. When they ignored him, little tyrant, he went to look for the family members he brought back. These people didn't dare to tell him to scram. So if they hid, they would be met with little tyrant he's merciless punches. After that, they could only listen to little tyrant he's repeated complaints. They had only seen this little tyrant as lively as a dragon and lively as a tiger. All day long, he was full of vigor and might. Now, he had a melancholy expression. To be honest, it could no longer be described as being struck by lightning. General, save me. Our family's little Gongzi has been replaced by someone. Hurry and find the real little Gongzi. Even if that little tyrant was a bit overbearing, it was still much better than this. Now, this one was really too terrifying. After General, he returned to the Fu. He heard this terrifying news. He almost pulled all of his beard off. He sent someone to call that evil creature over. Then he saw that there wasn't the slightest bit of vitality. His listless youngest son weakly called out Dad, instead of the energetic old man. What are you looking for me for? In that instant, he was greatly shocked. Then, he became angry, blocking the way in front of Jin Wang, Ye's procession of honor. You are really becoming more and more lawless. Laozi said so much to you, was it all in vain? Dad, Jin Wang, Yi is ignoring me. How can he ignore me? Then, as if he thought of something, his eyes suddenly became bright. Dad, why don't you go directly to the emperor and ask for an imperial edict? If there is an imperial edict, Jin Wang, you will definitely not refuse, right? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this idea was really too good. General He Jianwei was so angry that he almost fell backwards. This was completely not listening to his words and even fantasizing about asking for an imperial edict to fight. He knew that this evil creature's mind was only filled with fighting and fighting all day long, but he didn't think that would be so outrageous to this extent. Those who knew would only silently look at you, this idiot. Those who didn't know would think that you were taking the opportunity to secretly communicate with Jin Wang Yi in an attempt to make a big conspiracy. Jin Wang Yi not paying attention to you is right and also light. If he gave an order, the guard by his side could completely cripple you or even kill you. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. So, he took out the horsewhip that basically never left his side and lashed it at little tyrant He. Little tyrant He originally had a face full of hope, but what could he do? What he waited for was Laozi's whip. Thus, he began to jump up and down a dodge. Old man, why are you hitting me again? You're not allowed to hit anymore. If you hit again, Xiao Yu will fight back. Again? Xiao Yu will really fight back, However, he only heard all kinds of shouts and didn't really dare to fight back. When the people outside heard this, they breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, it was normal. At He Jianwei's age, in the end, he couldn't compare to He Jihai's physical strength. In the end, he stopped panting. You're not allowed to go find Jin Wang Yi again. Do you hear me? If you dare to go again, do you believe that Laozi will immediately send you back to the northeast border city? If I send him away, Xiao Yu will come back by himself? He Jihai grimaced in pain. After all, the injuries on his body were real. He muttered in a low voice. If it was before he saw Li Hongyuan's martial prowess, He Jihai would rather stay in the border city. Now, he hadn't even fought once, and he wanted to let him go? No way. He Jianwei was so angry that he almost vomited blood. I already said that Jin Wang Yi is not someone who is easy to provoke. He can let you go once, but there might not be a second time. You delivered yourself to his doorstep. Even if you die, no one can ask for justice from you. At most, I just blocked the carriage and didn't do anything else. Would Wang, you be so unreasonable as to directly take my life? He Hai muttered with a bit of grievance. General, he was so angry that he laughed. Reasonable? These 3 words can actually come out of your mouth? Little tyrant, he was speechless. Fine, he admitted that when they were in the border city, the most unreasonable person was him. Dad, in my opinion, Wang Yi is not as notorious as you say. He is such a powerful person. If he doesn't see eye to eye, he will directly beat them up and lose half his life. Who would dare to find trouble with him? He is not a 3-year-old child. He can't always find someone to be unhappy with. Therefore, the living king of hell and whatnot is definitely a false rumor. As a soldier, we should be upright and reasonable, seek truth from facts. Don't be like those civil officials who only know how to scheme and quarrel with words all day long. These words were taught by you, but now you are so prejudiced against Wang Yi. He Wei probably didn't think that this evil spawn would actually talk reason with him one day and even use his words to block him, and that won't find someone to be unhappy with. Didn't you, this evil spawn, specialize in doing this kind of thing? Don't you feel embarrassed to say such words again and again? General, he only felt that his head was big, but to be honest, he really couldn't do anything about this evil spawn. This evil spawn thought that Wang Yi was a good person. Then, no matter what, you couldn't change his way of thinking. Perhaps in some people's eyes, appearance was justice. But in He Hai's mind, it was definitely martial arts was justice. In any case, you're not allowed to go find Wang Yi again. Otherwise, Laozi will lock you in an iron cage. An iron cage that could lock up a tiger was probably the only thing that could lock up He Hai's mind. The iron bars were too thin and had to be specially made. He Hai's eyes turned, but he didn't continue to argue with his old man. He Wei was 100% sure that this evil spawn definitely hadn't given up on the idea. He didn't know what would happen next. Usually he was a boorish man, but that bit of intelligence was all used to play mind games with them. Who in the He family wasn't upright and strict with themselves? How could there be such an anomaly? If that face didn't look so similar to his own, he would suspect that his loyal wife had put a green hat on his head. Well, in fact, it was He Foreign who suspected that He Wei had brought back an outside wife to swap her son. Therefore, Foreign he also didn't believe that she had given birth to such a son. Of course, this was just a joke. However, when Foreign he beat her son, she was more ruthless than General He. If other people were beaten by their father, they could still find their mother for protection. But for He Hai, if he dared to find his mother, it would definitely be a male and female double fight. General He thought that in order to not make things worse, it would be best to report to Luqingdi. Originally, the He family was going to hold a banquet for 2 days, and the invitation had been sent out. However, they didn't expect that the Empress was seriously ill. Although it wasn't like she had passed away, they still had to give her some face. Therefore, the banquet was postponed. Because of this, little gangster he went out to play. Then, the next day, the servant girl who served He Hai found that the door of her young master's room couldn't be opened. Little gangster, he might have all kinds of bad habits, but he didn't like to laze in bed. It was already past the time, and it was too strange that he couldn't be seen. Although this servant girl was brought back from the border town and wasn't as delicate as the servant girls of ordinary families, she didn't dare to kick the young master's door. Therefore, she hurriedly ran out to report. He Wei and his Foreign came hand in hand. Both of them were dressed in martial attire. In a general family, this morning exercise was an essential homework. The general's Foreign first knocked on the door, but there wasn't the slightest movement. Then, her long, shapely eyebrows rose, and she lifted her foot to kick the door open. That action was quite nimble and destructive. It could be seen that she often did this kind of thing. When everyone entered the room, the result was that the bed was neat and tidy. There wasn't a single shadow, and it was ice cold. This person hadn't been on the bed for quite some time. The door was closed from the inside, so he could only go out through the window. It wasn't that little gangster, he hadn't done this kind of thing before. After checking, sure enough, there was a window that looked tightly closed, but in reality, it wasn't locked. Then, they found out that little gangster, his private stash of money was gone. Thus, how could they not know what was going on? The general's foreign fiercely glared at General He. Find that evil creature and then settle the account with you. Then she directly went out of the room. Someone come. Send a few people to guard the vicinity of Jin Qin Wang Fu. If you see He Ji Hai, that disgraceful thing, directly tie him up. If he dares to resist, as long as he's still alive, beat him until he's crippled. Behind him, General He rubbed his nose. That evil creature running away from home. Most likely it was because he said that he wanted to lock him up in an iron cage. Who knew that this evil creature, in order to achieve his goal, would directly play this trick? Being angered by his foreign, he felt that he was very innocent. Okay? Only beating him until he's crippled. Wasn't a bit too ruthless? The silver on He Ji Hai's body wasn't much, but it wasn't little either. It was enough for him to mingle around outside for a period of time. Regardless of whether he could exchange blows with Jin Qin Wang during this period of time, even if he didn't have the chance, he still had to create an opportunity. If he used up all the money on him and still didn't achieve his goal, then he would talk about it when the time came. After returning, he would be even more miserable. For the time being, he shouldn't think about it. In any case, every time he thought about how ruthless his Lianyang was, he couldn't help but grit his teeth. He knew that if he ran away from home, he would definitely be caught by his papa and mama. This kind of game where you chase and I hide, he had been playing since he was a few years old. Moreover, it was as if he was born with this skill, playing it very smoothly. Not long after, the land around Jin Qin Wang Fu had already been trampled by him. So when he saw his Laoj personally leading people to catch him, the little gangster squatting on the wall snorted disdainfully and continued to gnaw on the steamed bun in his hand. Little gangster, he was very confident that unless he was surrounded by enough people in a relatively wide area, he wouldn't be easily caught. In some aspects, little gangster, he was absolutely blessed by the heavens. He could master martial arts with just a little bit, and he also had a valiant physique and inexhaustible energy. His physical strength was also absolutely valiant. It wasn't enough to describe him as an animal. Other people would have times when they were tired on the battlefield, but on the battlefield, it was as if he was playing. In short, when he participated in the war at the northeast border, not once did he show any signs of fatigue. When other people were gasping for breath and their hands were shaking, he was as excited as if he had just finished warming up. Therefore, even if he messed around, those high-ranking officers really didn't hate him. Where was the limit of little gangster his physical strength? His family didn't know, the Northeast Army didn't know, and even he himself didn't know. After all, under normal circumstances, the limit couldn't be called the limit. That kind of oppression, or even struggling on the line between life and death, was the real limit. If there was anyone in the world who knew, it would probably be Li Hanyuan. In his previous life, it was this winter when the He family was exterminated. He Hai fought alone for 7 whole days. Except for the time when he was looking for food, he was either chasing the enemy or killing them. He didn't sleep at all. In the end, when he was finally found, he couldn't be called a human anymore. However, the aftereffects were also very serious. As for how long this peak state could last, Li Hanyuan later saw it with his own eyes. 3 to 4 days was nothing difficult. He really couldn't be called a human anymore. Although Li Hanyuan could still beat him now, he was very self-aware. First, it was the result of his deliberate training over the years. His previous life was far from what it was now. Second, there was no spiritual pressure in He Hongyuan's sea of consciousness, so it was difficult for him to explode. He was only 16 years old now. After a few more years, when he fully matured, the power that he could only explode now could be used. At that time, he would only need to use his arms and fingers. Li Hanyuan was definitely not his opponent. This was He Hai's own advantage. He occupied a high position, which other people couldn't achieve no matter how much they trained. Although He Ji Hai was very good at hiding from his own family, he was still not good at hiding from Yi's people. After all, the He family's people were soldiers. How could they be compared with the shadow guards in this respect? Therefore, when he Zhihai stepped on the ground, the shadow guards of the prince's mansion found out and reported to an E immediately. Li Hongyuan naturally knew. As long as he doesn't climb over the walls of Jin Wangfu, there's no need to care about him. It wasn't that the Wangfu's people didn't find Yihai's unexpected indulgence strange, but they didn't ask much. In the past, didn't they indulge Ruan Fangfei? At that time, they had a purpose. Now, they definitely had one. These people in Jin Wangfu always had a mysterious trust in their own master. The matter of Li Hongyuan wanting to cultivate Yihai, Jingwan knew about it. Jingwan often used this matter to tease him. In the end, Yihai was worried that he was too reckless and would implicate his family. Therefore, he only dared to wander around outside the Wangfu. However, in order to fish, Li Hongyuan's frequency of going out was relatively high. Of course, every time he went out, there was a legitimate reason, so no one would suspect anything. This time, it happened once, twice, thrice. Occasionally, when Yihai was ignored by Li Hongyuan, his elder brother would bring people out to catch him. However, he would always slip away. This matter naturally became known by more and more people. It was simply another matter that people took delight in talking about. Jin Wangfu's style in the past was something that everyone knew. However, in the past 1 or 2 years, he had restrained himself a lot. Only now did they discover this point. However, the living king of hell was still the living king of hell. He wouldn't stop being the king of hell just because he hadn't made a move for a period of time. It was also because that he family's young master didn't do anything that he was ignored. If he was annoyed again and again, it was estimated that he would make a move to clean him up. Many people were also guessing how long the He family's young master could last. However, no one dared to be certain. Thinking back, when Jin Wangfei and Jin Wangfu were engaged, there were people who opened a booklet to see how long Jin Wangfei could live. Jin Wangfei didn't have anything happen to her and properly married into the Wangfu. 10 li of red dowry, hundreds of people obstructing the marriage. It was very lively. After that, there were people who opened a booklet to see how long Jin Wangfei could live under Jin Wangfu. The result was similarly unexpected. So now, they really didn't dare to say anything with certainty. However, these didn't matter. It was enough that there was a show to watch. In fact, it wasn't only He Zhihai who was ignored by Li Hongyuan. There was another person, and that was Li Hongming. In the past, when they met, Li Hongyuan would at least give a greeting. Now, he completely ignored everyone he saw and treated the other brothers as normal. At this time, Li Hongming also knew that the previous matter wasn't over yet. Even if Li Hongyuan and Mu Fei reconciled, it didn't mean that he would be as good as before. If he was completely ignored by Li Hongyuan, it might not be a bad thing. However, he had to ensure that he would never provoke him in the future. Otherwise, at that time, he would most likely kill him. Even if he deliberately avoided him, he might still provoke him. After all, when he cleaned him up in the past, many times it was inexplicable. In the past, because of noble consort Su, Li Hongyuan was actually quite merciful to him. If he exerted a bit of pressure on him, then the other brothers would have to suffer a bit of pressure. In this regard, Li Hongyuan could be said to be a great help to him. If Li Hongyuan exerted a bit of pressure on him in the future, he could imagine how dejected he would be. Thinking of this, Li Hongming's expression became particularly gloomy. Noble consort Su originally didn't know about this matter, but Li Hongming intentionally or unintentionally let her know. As a result, noble consort Su's spirit began to fade after a few days. She called Li Hongming over and directly asked him, "Your younger brother helped you, but you didn't go to him to thank him?" Li Hongming smiled bitterly. "Mu Fei, this son has always wanted to, but I just haven't found the right opportunity. With this delay, sixth brother is giving me less and less of a chance." Noble consort Su directly smashed a cup at him. "Ben Gong is very clear about your thoughts. Don't expect Ben Gong to help you in this matter. Either you solve it yourself, or if he does anything to you in the future, you'll have to bear it yourself." Yuan had always been the kind of person who would take revenge on anyone who had a grudge against him. He would never let anything go past the night. This time, he was so angry because of her. He didn't want to argue with his mother, so naturally, he transferred all his anger to his second son. However, this bastard didn't take it seriously. Now that he finally realized that something was wrong, he came looking for her. Li Hongming could only leave Jade Essence Palace with a sullen face. Noble consort, Su rubbed her temples. Everyone says that Lao Lu is a vile creature. This Lao, and Min Xiang are also vile creatures. None of them are easy to worry about. His trusted palace, made beside him, hurriedly comforted him while gently massaging him. Noble consort Su's method didn't work, so Li Hongming could only go find Li Hongyuan. What did it mean to kiss someone's cold, but with warm face? He thoroughly understood what it meant. When Prince Rui came to Jinxin Wang Fu, he was shut out of the gate. This matter became a joke between brothers the next day. Li Hongming was used to putting on an act. At this time, his face couldn't keep it straight. It wasn't easy to meet Jinxin Wang, so he diligently appeared at the morning court. After the morning court ended, Li Hongming prepared to throw away his face in front of so many people. He didn't expect to achieve his goal, but to let the court officials see his sincerity. In the future, when Li Hongyuan made a move against him, he could say a few good words for him in front of Fu Huang. However, man proposes, God disposes. He was about to step forward when He Jinwei beat him to it. Greetings to Wang Ye. First of all, his attitude was quite sincere. Is something the matter? Li Hongyuan faintly glanced at him. Wang Ye, regarding the matter of my son obstructing Wang Ye many times recently, this official apologizes to Wang Ye and asks for Wang Ye's forgiveness. Ben Wang won't go as far as to bicker with a young boy. However, if it happens too many times, it will be annoying. General, he still needs to control it. If there's a next time, Ben Wang may not let him leave in one piece. Li Hongyuan's tone was still indifferent. He Jinwei smiled bitterly. Wang Ye, you don't know? My son is obsessed with martial arts. Towards people with strong martial arts skills, he must find someone to spar with. Because of this, I often reprimanded him, but it was completely useless. These days, he was afraid that this official would lock him up, so he simply took the money and went out without returning home. If it was a normal situation, I could take my son home, but my son is used to hiding in the border town and is slippery. It really gives me a headache. What does it have to do with Ben Wang? Li Hongyuan's face already showed some impatience. He Jinwei resisted the action of wiping his sweat. Facing Jinxin Wang, this pressure was really quite big. However, if he didn't satisfy that evil creature's wish, this matter would never end. This official has a presumptuous request. Can this official ask for Wang Ye to condescend? Let that evil creature know that there is always someone better. Perhaps it will stop. Li Hongyuan sneered. Last time, your son offended Ben Wang's Wang Fei. Ben Wang let him learn a lesson and didn't bicker with him. Now that you want Ben Wang to make a move, aren't you afraid that Ben Wang will cripple him? He Jinwei didn't think that Li Hongyuan was joking at all. He forced a smile. If it's really like this, then it's his fate. Lao Lu, since it's like this, you might as well help Minister He this once. It's also a good opportunity to let you see how far your martial arts have progressed. When you left the palace at the age of 16, Zhen hasn't seen your martial arts skills. Among you brothers, your martial arts skills are the best, and your innate talent is the best. Lu Chengdi, who had originally left from Dan Emperor's side, appeared outside the main hall at some unknown time. He was quite emotional. Many thanks for Emperor's help. He Jinwei was extremely grateful. Sure enough, this report from before was correct. Li Hongyuan frowned, appearing a little unwilling. Fu Huang, Yuaner is not willing to fulfill such a small wish. Lu Qingdi pretended to be sad. I can't accept the order. Li Hongyuan responded, but his face was still cold. Fu Huang is still full of energy when shouting at people. People like it more like this. He showed obvious disdain. Lu Qingdi's face darkened. Disgraceful thing. How can you speak to Laozi like that? Li Hongyuan's expression eased, almost writing, sure enough, it should be like this, pleasing to the eye. Lu Qingdi's nose almost crooked from anger. On the side, He Jinwei secretly glanced at Lu Qingdi. His mind was balanced. That evil spawn of his would also talk back, but he wouldn't dare to contradict him and wouldn't specifically anger him. But Jinxin Wang was different. Looking at the situation and the surrounding courtiers, they were completely unconcerned. Then looking at the emperor, after a few breaths of time, he adjusted his mood. It looked like he was used to it. Perhaps the situation was still light. That evil spawn of his was really far from it. If Lu Qingdi wanted to watch, this could only be done in the palace. There was no need for instructions. Someone had already taken the initiative to pass down the message. As for where to find little bully, he who didn't return home, just look at the places he appeared in these few days. In any case, he was near Jin Qinhuang Fu. Otherwise, if they took Jin Qinhuang's honor guard out for a walk, he would definitely appear. You are several years older than Minister He's youngest son. Later, when you spar, control yourself a little and don't go too far. No, He Jinwei hurriedly said, Your Majesty, you don't know. Once my son fights with others, he gets excited easily, especially when he meets his match. He doesn't know how to restrain himself. Moreover, that kid always doesn't know what's good for him. Later, when Wang Ye really shows mercy on him, he will only think that Wang Ye is looking down on him. Instead, it will arouse his ferocious nature, and he will become more and more reckless. If by any chance he injures Wang Ye, that evil spawn should be ruthlessly dealt with. Hearing this, Lu Qingdi frowned. Minister, how is your son's martial arts? Originally, he thought that a 16-year-old kid, no matter how powerful he was, would be like that. Now, it seemed that it wasn't the case. He Jinwei's lips quivered, attracting the attention of the courtiers who had stayed behind to watch the battle. After a while, he awkwardly said, Replying to your Majesty, that evil creature is the number one in the Northeast Army. This is not a boast made by the soldiers to give him face, but he used his own strength to fight for it. This subject and my eldest son have both been defeated by him. Many people gasped with Lu Qingdi. They all knew how valiant He Jinwei was, and He Jinwei's eldest son was even better. This 16-year-old kid was able to defeat them. Was the He family trying to defy the heavens? After exclaiming in amazement, Lu Qingdi turned to look at He Jinwei. My dear minister, you hit it well. He Jinwei was embarrassed. Your Majesty, the main thing is that this kid's temperament is too unstable. It's difficult for him to take on such a big responsibility. This minister originally wanted to train him for 2 more years. Lu Qingdi was not an unreasonable person. Although he didn't know much about war, he knew that martial arts alone couldn't lead soldiers. He nodded to express his understanding. My dear minister's worries are reasonable. However, it's a blessing for our Qi Yuan dynasty that the He family can produce another valiant general. Your Majesty is too kind. It's my duty to protect the country. Naturally, the emperor liked this kind of official very much. However, when he looked at Li Hanyuan again, he was worried. He was very proud of his son, but his opponent was the best in the Northeast Army, a little lunatic who didn't care about anything when he fought. His son was raised by a noble and was a few years older than that kid, so he didn't have an advantage. Was it too late to stop this fight now? He was the emperor with a golden mouth and jade words, but there were so many people who really believed him. Li Hanyuan didn't seem to notice Lu Qingdi's worry. Even if he did, he would ignore it. After fishing for so long, it was just the beginning of the harvest. How could he stop now? Imperial father, this son will go to Imperial mother's place to change clothes. I will take my leave now. After saying that, he left by himself. Lu Qingdi opened his mouth and swallowed back the words that were about to come out. He Jinwei looked down and didn't see the emperor and father who didn't have any dignity at all. Lu Qingdi didn't care. In any case, it wasn't the first time that he was seen by his officials. Everyone was used to it. After waiting for a moment, Your Majesty, although my son is muddle-headed, he has always only challenged people who are stronger than him. Although he is always judged based on his own feelings, he has almost never made a mistake. Therefore, in this official's opinion, Jin Wang Ye's skill is above my son's, so. According to the degree of ruthlessness of the King of Hell, you don't have to worry at all. Lu Qingdi was really relieved, but he was puzzled. Was this son strong to this extent? He leisurely went to the martial arts practice field in the palace. That was the place where the princes practiced martial arts. They already knew who was going to use it. Moreover, The emperor and the court officials had arrived, so they didn't dare to neglect. They prepared the field and carefully checked it again and again to make sure that there were no mistakes. As the saying goes, swords have no eyes. Therefore, for this kind of thing, they didn't ask for merit, but to not make a mistake. It should be known that the masters who taught the princes martial arts were always trembling with fear. If they met those mischievous and completely disobedient princes, they would simply put their heads on their waistbands. Not long after Lu Qingdi and the others sat down, Li Hongyuan also arrived. He changed out of his gorgeous Qinhuang robe and put on a black robe. The sleeves were tightened and the waist was tightened. His whole person seemed more upright and straight. His handsome face was matchless. If one ignored his temperament, anyone who saw him would praise him. What a pity, it was really a pity, including Lu Qingdi. At first, he was proud, but then his expression darkened. Even if this child lost his mother, if he wasn't a devil, and Li Hongyuan's other brothers seemed to suddenly realize at this moment that if the Imperial Gui Fei was still here, they probably wouldn't have to fight for anything. They would obediently go to the corner and plant mushrooms. Maybe they could even become rich Wang, yeah. Rejoice, really rejoice. Even so, those who didn't know the truth were still very afraid of him. However, those who knew Li Hongyuan's ability were all twitching their mouths and silently criticizing him. Pity? Rejoice? Ha! I hope you won't cry too miserably in the end. This was the one who hid the deepest and the one with the most profound cultivation. The others were just drizzling rain. He Zhihai hadn't arrived yet, but he didn't mind waiting for a while. Anyway, after this period of time, the matter in Jiangnan had basically come to a final conclusion. For the time being, there was nothing important at hand. Lu Qingdi had the mentality of stealing half a day's rest. He Zhenwei was a little sweaty. No matter what, it was a sin to let the emperor wait for a nobody. Fortunately, the waiting time was much shorter than expected. He Zhihai excitedly entered the martial arts practice field and stared at Li Hongyuan with shining eyes. His expression was quite excited. It seemed that there was only one person left in the world. The emperor and the ministers with great power all went to hell. He Zhenwei had a feeling that he couldn't bear to look directly. Did this evil creature have to be so shameful? That was a man. Even if he was incomparably handsome, he was still a man. Your eyes were simply like a beautiful woman in thin clothes in front of you. You want to take off her clothes at any time. Quickly stop. Her father is still on the side and can decide your life and death at any time. Beloved official He, your son, He Zhenwei was very embarrassed. Your Majesty, my son is too excited. Really, he was like this before he fought with people who were stronger than him. In fact, it was not so exaggerated before, really. But did he dare to say this? He didn't dare to at all. Hearing his general say that his son was strong, Lu Qingdi was happy in his heart and didn't care about other things. He Zhihai, what are you doing in a daze? Hurry up and greet the emperor. He Zhenwei roared. He Zhihai finally came to his senses. People like He Zhihai didn't know what embarrassment was. He just greeted the emperor by the book. At a glance, it was obvious that he hadn't learned the rules for a long time and was stiff and inflexible. After that, his eyes lit up. Your Majesty, can we start? Lu Qingdi nodded sadly. Then, in the blink of an eye, he rushed to his son. He really couldn't wait. He turned to look at He Zhenwei. Beloved official He, you were right. Not to mention his obsession with martial arts. His temperament was really unbearable. Without weapons, they fought with fists and feet. Chapter 384. Fist and palm movements change. It could be said to be dazzling. Legs followed closely, fists and kicks generated wind. Even if a layman looked at it, there would be murderous intent everywhere. Swaying or lifting or covering or leading or slapping, so on. Arms were like snakes, full of strength. Legs were like whips, but the power was like a staff, fierce and overbearing. There were no weapons in their hands, but they were able to turn every part of their body into a weapon. Knees, elbows, feet, hands, they were especially prominent, and the places they attacked were also the opponent's weak points: head, neck, heart, and genitals. Fists hit flesh. There seemed to be a sound. Bystanders who heard it felt painful, But the two people on the field seemed to be fighting more and more fiercely, their faces not showing the slightest bit of pain. Insiders could see that Jin Qinhuang, Li Hongyuan leaned towards skillful strength, and little overlord He Zhihai leaned towards strength. In terms of the age of the two, this point was just the opposite. It could only be said that He Zhihai had an innate advantage in terms of physique. He Zhihai was at the border all year round, and in all likelihood, he had participated in large and small battles, so his awareness was definitely better. However, once again, it was unexpected that Jin Qinhuang, this noble Wang Ye, was unexpectedly better. This was to take apart and look at it. Overall, anyone could see that Li Hongyuan clearly held the advantage. Although it was not to the point of being one-sided, but when Li Hongyuan landed 10 times on He Zhihai's body, He Zhihai landed 3 or 4 times on his body. This kind of disparity was still quite big. Thus, if He Zhihai wanted to defeat Li Hongyuan, it was impossible without time to grow. Moreover, the premise was that Jin Qinhuang stopped here, and He Zhihai rapidly rose. In other people's eyes, this kind of situation was probably impossible. Even if Jin Qinhuang did not have as much room for growth as He Zhihai, he should not be able to maintain his peak and then go downhill. However, the fact was indeed so. Li Hongyuan was very clear that right now, he was at his peak state and basically would not rise again. However, he would continue this state for several decades. He Zhihai belonged to the type that became more courageous with more setbacks. He was repeatedly injured in Li Hongyuan's hands, but he became more and more excited. That feeling, it was as if he was about to ignite. Li Hongyuan's feeling was actually a bit similar. After all, a rare opponent could not be found in the capital. Moreover, when they faced him, they were always subconsciously afraid of him. They were absolutely not like He Zhihai, who only had eyes for opponents. He would go all out, without respect of seniority. On the other hand, when Li Hongyuan had more contact with He Zhihai in his previous life, he was more than one level lower than He Zhihai. It was okay to stop when it came to exchanging blows, but a real fight was absolutely impossible. At that time, unless it was on the battlefield, He Zhihai would not go all out. However, he was also a person who did not like to restrain himself from fighting. Therefore, he basically no longer fought with his own people. It was only Li Hongyuan, the emperor, who had the absolute advantage of his identity and was not very weak himself, that he could fight everywhere. Even so, when it was time to fight, he still did not hesitate. Therefore, He Zhihai was a guy who even dared to fight with the emperor. Now, the situation was reversed from that time. Li Hongyuan's heart was more or less a little happy. Especially He Zhenwei, this gatekeeper. He always felt that his own son's path was a bit similar to Jin Qinhuang's. However, if he looked carefully, it seemed completely different. It was really strange. With one look, he knew that the masters of these two people should be completely different. In the end, he could not find a reason. Either it was because of some coincidence, or there was a certain connection between the ancestors of the two families. Thus, he did not pursue it. Because the two people were fighting with fire, the battle situation was getting bigger and bigger. Going back and forth, they arrived in front of the weapon rack. Because the movements were too fast, no one saw who took out the weapon first. One was a spear, the other a halberd. Because they were not used to it, it was somewhat inconvenient in their hands, whether it was the weight or the length. However, the two people situation was the same, so it did not matter. The weapons collided and sparks flew. Along with the familiarity of the weapon, it gradually became a part of the body. The more precise the control, the greater the lethality could be, and the less it could be. It depended on the mentality of the person using it. But these two people, would the lethality be small? Sure enough, blood was soon seen. On He Zhihai's arm, because the color of the clothes was relatively light, the bloodstains were very obvious. He Zhenwei did not have any reaction. People like him could basically judge the severity of the wound based on the bloodstains. That kind of injury was nothing to He Zhihai. However, not everyone was as calm as him. For many people, especially the civil officials, it was absolutely the first time for them to fight such a fierce battle. Naturally, they were so nervous that they sweated all over. Unsurprisingly, the following injuries became more and more serious, and Li Honyuan was no exception. When Li Honyuan was injured for the first time, Lu Qingdi stood up with a whoosh and directly shouted to stop. Unfortunately, perhaps the people on the field did not hear it, or perhaps they did not want to pay attention to him. Anyway, they continued to fight. The imperial guards guarding around did not dare to rashly step forward. Lu Qingdi directly ordered Yu Zhongqing to go up and separate the two people. Your Majesty, I am not strong enough, and I'm afraid I can't do anything. Moreover, the prince and young master here are fighting fiercely. If a third person rashly intervenes, they may be worried about the third person's life and slightly divert their attention. If the other party does not pay attention, it may cause more casualties. Therefore, Your Majesty, please think twice. Having said it so clearly, Lu Qingdi had to think thrice even if he did not. However, if they continued to fight, who knew what the situation would be? Lu Qingdi had nowhere to vent his anger, so he looked coldly at He Jinwei. The one who injured his son was He Jinwei's son. At this time, he did not care whether you were a meritorious official or not. He Jinwei smiled bitterly in his heart, but what could he do? He could only silently endure. Being with the emperor was like being with a tiger. This was not a joke. The emperor's words were golden, but in fact, when he was capricious, no one could withstand it. He was more worried about his son's health. His son was at a disadvantage, and his son was more seriously injured. Originally, under normal circumstances, the battle would not last long. However, He Jinhai could not follow normal logic. He was simply a typical example of someone who became stronger when facing a stronger opponent. Just when everyone was worried that the fight would really go out of control, this fight unexpectedly ended. Although He Jinhai's halberd was hooked onto Li Hongyuan's spear, the spearhead was pressed against the other party's neck. It cut through the skin, and blood dripped down the shiny spearhead. If it went in another inch, He Jinhai's life would have been taken. Li Hongyuan withdrew his hand and casually threw the spear away. He Jinhai threw the halberd away and laughed. Satisfying. It's really too satisfying. Lu Qingdi and the others had already hurried over, one hand holding Li Hongyuan's arm. Yuan, how's your injury? Li Hongyuan stood around. Imperial father, you're pinching my wound. Lu Qingdi hurriedly let go. Looking at his hand full of blood, he was completely furious. Come, take this, insolent. Imperial father, swords have no eyes. It's just some superficial wounds. Why do you have to make a big fuss? Besides, this son is also having a good time beating them up. Li Hongyuan revealed a pure smile. This smile made Lu Qingdi stare blankly. No matter what, he basically never saw Li Hongyuan smile like this. It was too similar to his birth mother. After a moment, he sighed dejectedly. His anger was completely gone. Where's the imperial physician? Still not hurrying over to treat their injuries. He Jinwei breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, he almost had a heart attack. However, at this moment, he also recognized his son's words. Jin Xinwang might not be that bad. He Jinhai was still in a state of excitement and was completely unaware of the danger that almost took his life. In the end, this was not the place to treat the wounds. After the imperial physician took Li Hongyuan's pulse, his blood was vigorous, there was no sign of weakness, and there were no internal injuries. Only then did Lu Qingdi feel relieved. In the past, when you didn't get along with your brothers, you always said that it was just a small quarrel and nothing serious. I didn't believe it before, but now I really believe it. With today's situation, he didn't need to use much. He only used 30% of his strength. If the others didn't die, they would be crippled. But in fact, at most, it was just a bit of flesh pain. It would have been better if he didn't say it. When he said it, some people on the side couldn't help but tremble. Just now, they were too nervous and didn't think of this. Now that they thought about it, not to mention the others, Prince Kong felt his lower back hurt. How much courage did he have to dare to wave his fist at Li Hongyuan at that time? The more he thought about it, the more he felt a lingering fear. After all, he really felt the killing intent at that time. If the other party didn't stop in the end, his little life might really have been lost. In the future, he must avoid this living king of hell. It was fine if he didn't know his true strength, but if he knew, he still went up to find fault with him. How stupid would he be to do such a thing? For Li Honyuan, this might be an unexpected harvest. He Jinwei didn't dare to leave him in the palace to treat his wounds. If by chance the emperor saw this kid and was unhappy, he directly killed him. He wouldn't even have a place to cry. He just wanted to let the imperial physician give him a hasty bandage and then immediately leave the palace. However, what imperial physician, what lousy, everything was thrown to one side by He Jinhai. He just looked at Li Honyuan. Wang, ya fight again next time? He Jinwei's eyes darkened. He just wanted to slap this evil creature to death. Although from the beginning, he knew that it probably wouldn't be over with just one fight. After all, when he was in the northeast border city, he would always challenge opponents who were stronger than him again and again until he completely defeated the opponent. His progress could be said to be godlike and exceptionally astonishing. However, at a certain point, this speed would slow down. Looking at the gap between him and Prince Jean, how could it take 1 or 2 years? This was still under the condition that he absolutely could surpass. What if he couldn't? Could it be that he would always pester the other party to fight? Thinking about that scene, he felt that his life was gloomy. Evil creature, shut up for me. You think everyone is like you, only knowing how to fight and kill all day. Wang Ye condescended to exchange pointers with you once, and you still want a yard after getting an inch? He Jinhai immediately became dejected, like an abandoned puppy, listless and pitiful. It inexplicably made people feel a little distressed. Lu Qingdi was paying attention to Li Hongyuan's mood. He saw that there was a slight change on his face, as if he tacitly agreed with He Jinwei's words. However, Lu Qingdi felt that this shouldn't be the case. Thinking about his son's previous smile, this son looked carefree and wanton before. He might not really be happy, right? Beloved official, he doesn't need to be like this. As the saying goes, meeting one's match is also a great joy in life. It's fine to exchange pointers, but you're not allowed to use weapons. In addition, you must stop when it's appropriate. Your Majesty, do you think that you are safe without weapons? Too naive. In a flash, little tyrant, he was in high spirits again, beaming with joy. That stupid look made people unable to look straight at him. General, he really wanted to cover his face. This wasn't his son. To be this stupid, pitiful, and whatnot, it was all fake. Your Honor, what do you think? Lu Qingdi asked with a smile. Li Honyuan glanced at him expressionlessly and lowered his head to fix his cuffs. Life is too boring. It doesn't matter if I stretch my muscles once in a while. This son will take his leave first. After saying this, he delicately left and went to Jade Essence Palace. Lu Qingdi shook his head and laughed. He was obviously very happy, but he still kept a straight face, as if someone owed him millions of taels of silver. Since sixth brother likes to stretch your muscles, when little young master he came to find you, you should have directly agreed. Why wait until... Obviously, he was trying to stir up trouble again. But before he could finish, Lu Qingdi gave him a cold stare. Putting aside the fact that the opponent who came to his door was not the one he liked, he was a prince. How could he respond so casually? Did he have to fight with any Tom, Dick, or Harry who came to his door? Forget it. Except for the throne, for Lu Qingdi, Li Honyuan was his son. Nothing else mattered. Li Honyuan went to Jade Essence Palace. When he went to change clothes, noble consort Su knew what he was going to do, but she didn't expect that he would return with injuries. Imperial concubine Su almost exploded on the spot. Her son was a prince, a king. In her opinion, a spar between children was nothing serious. There would definitely be no problem. After all, he was just the son of an official, the kind that had no official rank or title. It was obvious that no matter what, he would never dare to really hurt someone. However, reality gave her a slap in the face. Li Honyuan took off his clothes and let the imperial physician apply medicine on him. Noble consort Su didn't avoid him and just looked at him with a distressed expression. Li Honyuan first closed his eyes. In fact, this kind of injury didn't matter. He would be fine after some rest. He didn't want to pay attention to noble consort Su, but noble consort Su kept sobbing. Li Honyuan heard it and felt annoyed. He opened his eyes, and a hint of helplessness quickly appeared in his eyes. Mother, don't worry. I'm really fine. I know. Compared to last year, this isn't an injury at all. I'm still far from death. It would have been better if he didn't mention it. Now that he mentioned it, noble consort Su cried even more fiercely. How can you talk like that? Besides, how can you say the word death so casually? I will be careful. I won't be injured next time. Mother, don't cry. Li Hanyuan didn't know how to coax people, so his words seemed a little stiff. There will be a next time? Noble consort Su's voice suddenly rose a lot. Imperial Mother knows that in the capital, no one dares to truly fight with this prince. This son also has nothing else to do. Today, I fought with General He's youngest son. This person is different from others and had a good fight. This son felt pretty good. Imperial Mother should also know what kind of personality this son has. Imperial Father has also agreed to this matter, so there will definitely be a next time. I've made Imperial Mother worry, so this son asked for Imperial Mother's forgiveness. Li Hanyuan was slightly ashamed and couldn't help lowering his voice a bit. Noble consort Su's lips trembled, but in the end, she didn't say anything to stop him. This son wasn't any worse than his other brothers. In fact, he was even better. However, his father Emperor gave him a lot of doting, but suppressed him in terms of power. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be happy. It was already good enough that they didn't hate his mother as well. It was probably because of this that the Emperor was especially indulgent towards him. Then you must be careful. Don't get injured again. Li Hanyuan smiled. Mother, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. The imperial physician was concentrating on treating the wound. He looked down as if he was too focused and didn't hear what the mother and son were saying. After the wound was treated, the palace made from Jade Palace brought over warm water to wipe Li Hongyuan's body. She lowered her head, her face red, and looked very shy. Li Hanyuan frowned. An annoyance flashed through his eyes. He directly reached out to take the handkerchief and did it himself. But just as the handkerchief fell on his body, another hand reached over. You want our mother do it? Li Hongyuan's hand paused. When he met noble consort Su's gentle gaze, he finally let go and closed his eyes again. The feeling of the handkerchief rubbing against his skin was exceptionally clear. Noble consort Su's movements were very gentle, as if she was afraid of hurting him. If it was Jingwan, Li Hanyuan would probably enjoy it very much. But it wasn't her. This slow thing made him a little impatient. In this life, he acted the most in front of noble consort Su. Although it wasn't a big deal to him, he still found it tiresome. Mother, this son is not made of porcelain. There's no need to be so careful. It won't break. What nonsense are you talking about? Shut up. She gently patted him. In fact, noble consort Su had noticed some other wounds on Li Hongyuan's body. Although they weren't obvious, and the imperial physician didn't dare to look at them carefully, she was different. She knew very well how they were caused. In particular, there were teeth marks in certain places. Because his skin looked whiter than normal, it was obvious that they were left after the blood had healed. Although she didn't know if he didn't have a concubine by his side, no matter whether he did or not, there was no other person who would dare to leave bite marks and scratches on his body except for his princess consort. Because she already had a big opinion of Jingwan, she was even more angry now. As a wife, how dare she be so presumptuous? Her son was such a precious person. How dare she offend him? It was simply outrageous. Moreover, as a wife, she should be dignified and virtuous. Even in bed, she should know how to be reserved. She didn't know how licentious she was. Even a concubine who used her sex appeal to others wouldn't be to this extent. At this moment, noble consort Su even knew why her son was seduced by his princess consort. As the saying went, as long as one felt that it was a bad thing from the beginning, then no matter what one did, there would be thorns in it. Although noble consort Su felt indignant, she didn't show it on her face. However, she was already thinking in her heart. Since her son liked women who were more wild in bed, she would help him adjust. She would teach them both. As a prince, how could there be no one to serve him? Her son shouldn't be so wronged. In noble consort Su's opinion, her son cared about the birth of his child. She was only taught to serve him, so he shouldn't refuse. Besides, no matter how this servant was in bed, She would never dare to leave a trace on her son's body. Li Hanyuan didn't know what noble consort Su was thinking at this time. If he knew, he wouldn't say anything. She would just wait to be slapped in the face. The bloodstains on his body were all wiped clean. Li Hanyuan put on his prince's imperial robe again. It was impossible to tell that he was injured at all. Noble consort Su tidied his clothes. My son is indeed handsome and elegant. Li Hanyuan chuckled. Everyone says that this son is useless except for this body. Mother, you're really praising yourself. Nonsense. How can Yuan be useless? Those people only know how to spread false rumors. How can they know how good my son is? Noble consort Su was proud to have raised such a son. If mother thinks he's good, then he's good. This son will be leaving the palace now. Noble consort Su wanted to urge him to stay, but in the end, she didn't say anything. It wasn't good for an adult prince to hang around in the harem for a long time. You must pay attention to your wound. Since your estate's doctor is skilled, you might have better medicine. If you do, you can change it when you go back. This son understands. I'll be leaving now. Noble consort Su went out with him and saw Li Hongming in the outer hall. When Li Hongming saw the two of them together, he went forward without saying anything. With his mother around, he wouldn't ignore him. However, Li Hanyuan really ignored him. He took a step to the side and brushed past him. Li Hongming froze on the spot. He never hid his emotions in front of noble consort Su, so the gloomy expression on his face was quite obvious. Li Hongming then looked at noble consort Su's unkind eyes. The corners of his mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. At that moment, noble consort Su really wanted to slap him. You still want to scheme over such a small matter. If you don't have the slightest bit of sincerity, who would care about you? What did I teach you for so many years? Did it all go to waste? You thought that if he ignored you, mother might be sad. You even schemed against mother. But didn't you think that mother would be sad? You want to pretend to be brothers at this time? Do you think I don't know your true relationship? What's the use of pretending in front of me? I think you're used to pretending. You don't forget your words and actions at all times. I told you before that if you want to achieve great things, you have to create a good image. However, I also told you that going too far is as bad as falling short. You're like this even in front of your close relatives. Even if you succeed in the end, will everyone betray you? Li Hongming was scolded by noble consort Su until his face turned green and white. After a moment, he said, Mother, this son knows his mistake. You don't only know your mistake with your mouth. Scram, just looking at you makes me annoyed. This son will take his leave. Li Hongming responded in a low voice. Then he turned and left. After leaving the Jade Essence Palace, Li Hongming put on a perfect mask again in the blink of an eye. He always had to be magnanimous, elegant, and gentle to others. He looked like he was courteous to the wise and let people feel that he valued you. He made people feel that even if their status was low, he wouldn't see through them. There was no difference in status between heaven and earth. Deep down, he was the most indifferent, ruthless, and selfish. In his eyes, other people were nothing but useful. However, at this time, Li Hongming was very clear that he had to reconcile with Li Hongyuan. After seeing Li Hongyuan's martial strength, this matter was even more urgent. Even if he pushed everything back, now was a critical period. There were too many things to do, and he couldn't afford to toss them around. Li Hongyuan was actually a little worried at this time. He was injured, and Wanwan knew about it. It wouldn't be a problem to fool around for the first few days, but even if the wound healed, it would leave a scar. Sooner or later, it would be known. After a few days, there might be another crime of concealing and not reporting. Sure enough, he had a good fight for a while, but there were a lot of troublesome things later. Therefore, this was the difference between caring and not caring. Li Hongyuan went to Imperial concubine Su's place with a body full of injuries. He didn't care about Imperial concubine Su's feelings at all. As for Jingwan, on the one hand, he was afraid that she would be worried. On the other hand, he was a little inexplicably timid. Imagine, if it was Jingwan who hurt him, no matter what the reason was, he was afraid that he would explode. Even if Wanwan knew the reason for his actions and understood, it would be difficult to forgive him. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. After returning to the prince's mansion, Li Hongyuan's attitude unknowingly became a little careful. They hadn't been married for long, but after all, they were the closest people to each other. Jingwan naturally noticed it at the first moment. She narrowed her eyes slightly and examined Li Hongyuan. Unexpectedly, she didn't directly come up to kiss and hug him. It should be known that as long as it was in private, his actions couldn't be too natural and casual. "Ah Yuan, did you do something wrong to me?" Li Hongyuan coughed lightly, then pulled Jingwan's hand into his embrace and rubbed it against the side of his neck. "How could I?" His attitude was simply fawning and acting coquettishly, yet he still dared to say that there was no problem. Then, Jingwan smelled a trace of something strange on Li Hongyuan. Her sense of smell was originally more sensitive than that of ordinary people. Therefore, she tilted her head back and pressed a finger against Li Hongyuan's forehead. "Speak. If you confess, you'll be lenient. If you resist, you'll be strict." Li Hongyuan was a little helpless. I was a little injured today." Jingwan's expression was a little dangerous. "And then, when I was practicing with He Zhihai, he said that he was a little injured, but Jingwan didn't really believe that it was just a little injury. Moreover, he said, if you could get injured in a practice session, I presume that Your Highness is quite selfless? Your Highness and the young master of the He family are really love-hate. Huh? Isn't that right, Your Highness?" Then she placed her hand on his shoulder, one hand moving along his arm and the other along his chest, caressing down inch by inch. Of course, that was if one ignored the strength of her hand and that creepy smile. Not to mention Li Hongyuan, even the servants by the side knew that the princess consort was angry. And from the looks of it, it seemed that she was quite angry. Li Hongyuan let out a muffled groan, and a painful expression appeared on his face. It was as if it was painful to look at. Jingwan subconsciously reduced her strength. "Now you know it's painful? Your Highness didn't seem to have any abnormalities at all before. Actually, it's not painful, really." Li Hongyuan looked calm and indifferent, as if he didn't care at all. Jingwan fiercely pinched him again, and, as expected, she saw Li Hongyuan's expression change again. For a moment, Jingwan didn't know if he was deliberately pretending to gain sympathy or if it was really very painful. However, it was inevitable that it would hurt when injured. As long as the nerves of pain were normal, then it depended on the person's ability to endure pain. This man was a strong person, but in the end, he was raised in luxury. Go call Gong Jiu over. In the end, worry and heartache took over. Even if it was treated, Jingwan was still worried. She watched as Gong Jiu unbandaged the wound and checked if it was necessary to apply medicine again. Then, Jingwan was so angry that she didn't know where to vent her anger. This was called a little injury? Even if she counted them one by one, it would take a long time. Even Gong Jiu said that it was a little injury. However, if it was her previous life, even a small wound would need at least 2 or 3 stitches. Was this a little injury? Jingwan didn't say anything and just sat there with a cold face. She didn't feel anything in front of noble consort Su, but now she felt as if there was a knife at her back. Li Hongyuan sighed in his heart. This injury was really nothing to him. Gong Jiu wasn't affected. He immediately saw what medicine was used on the wound and prepared to add a medicine that wouldn't inhibit the medicine, but could speed up the healing process. "Gong Jiu, the medicine you used on young master he last time should have good effects on external and internal injuries, right? Use that medicine on Wang." The former secret guard, who had been silent for a long time, was now the food doctor. His hands couldn't help but tremble. Wang Fei really couldn't be offended. Even if Wang Yi did something wrong, he still had to be punished. After a pause, he said, "Wang Fei, Wang Yi has already applied medicine. That medicine and this medicine, what's wrong?" Jingwan asked with a smiley face. Gong Jiu subconsciously shut his mouth. The fake smile on the princess's face was a little frightening. "Use it." Li Hongyuan didn't say anything. As long as it could calm his wife down, it didn't matter if it hurt a little more. Gong Jiu was still a little hesitant. His master didn't know the power of the medicine. It should be known that in their eyes, He Zhihai was definitely a tough guy. Moreover, he was born and grew up in the border town, so he definitely suffered a lot. However, before the White Dragon Temple last year, it was estimated that his master's skin had not been broken. Although they were quite surprised to see his master's endurance at that time, there was still no way to compare him with He Jihai, who was really thick-skinned and rough. They had completely seen He Jihai's situation at that time. Although the effect was good, because it was too painful, if he couldn't bear it, he might die of pain. Master didn't care, but Gong Jiu still wanted to say something to Jingwan, but Li Honyuan stopped him with his eyes. Gong Jiu learned a lot of skills at a young age, so he was naturally very smart. How could he not know his master's meaning? If it weren't for his poker face, he might have twitched at this moment. In order to take advantage of the princess consort, he would resort to any means. Now, in order to ask for forgiveness, he would naturally be scheming. It should be known that even if the princess consort was angry, she would definitely forgive him after some time. However, he had to resort to such means. Seeing Gong Jiu's reaction, Jingwan naturally noticed something strange. Taking the medicine might be more terrible than she expected. She was hesitating and decided to give up. However, Gong Jiu, who was a man of action, had taken the medicine out of the medicine box and decisively sprinkled it on one of the smaller wounds. In a very short time after that, Li Hongyuan's painful voice burst out, but he subconsciously swallowed it back. His teeth were tightly clenched, his body was convulsing, and the blue veins on the back of his hands, forehead, and neck were bulging. It looked quite scary. Jingwan was even more frightened by his reaction. This medicine was more terrible than she expected. It was countless times more terrible. Jingwan didn't care about being angry. She told him to remember the lesson and not to mess around next time. She also forgot about it and hugged Li Hongyuan. Gong Jiu, hurry up and remove the medicine. What are you waiting for? Jingwan was so anxious that her eyes turned red. In fact, Gong Jiu had already prepared for this. He used a small amount of medicine, and now he quickly scraped off the powder. However, after all, it was on the wound, so there must be some residual medicine. Princess, the residual medicine may gradually lose its effect in half an hour. Wash it off. Wash it off immediately. Use clear liquor. Qi Yuan's winemaking skill was quite good. There were several kinds of clear and mellow liquor with a high alcohol content. Gong Jiu didn't question Jingwan's words, and Eunuch Mu moved faster. He brought the best clear liquor as fast as he could. Normally, when the liquor touched the wound, it would be extremely painful. However, the stimulation of the liquor was completely indifferent. The medicine that was still floating on the surface of the wound could be washed off, but what about the medicine that was deep in the blood? He could only wait for the medicine to lose its effect. Seeing Li Honyuan in so much pain, Jingwan burst into tears. I'm sorry. It's my fault. It's all my fault. I shouldn't be angry because you don't cherish yourself and do such a thing. Yuan. Jingwan was careful not to touch other wounds. Li Honyuan was actually quite conscious, but he couldn't speak. He was worried that he would cry out if he opened his mouth. As for other wounds, he couldn't feel them at all at this moment. Jingwan wanted to let go, but he held her tightly. However, extreme pain often led to the increase of strength. Hearing Jingwan's muffled groan, he subconsciously pushed her away. Whether it was pain or itch, they could be transferred in other ways. He just didn't know how effective it was now. Jingwan pushed Gong Jiu and the others away, and then leaned forward to avoid his wounds. She tried her best to arouse his desire. To be honest, since they got married, Jingwan had taken the initiative, but it was definitely the first time that she was so enthusiastic. Li Honyuan was slightly stunned. At that moment, the pain might have really been alleviated, but in fact, he still couldn't respond to her. He didn't even dare to open his mouth when she kissed him on the lips. He was afraid that he would bite her. Perhaps it was really too painful. This desire didn't rise so easily, but Jingwan didn't show any signs of stopping. She didn't know how much time had passed, but when Li Honyuan hugged Jingwan and kissed her, she realized that the effects of the drug might have worn off. However, she didn't push him away. Her expression was as if she was facing a porcelain doll that would break at the slightest touch. Li Honyuan laughed. It's all right. His voice was a little low. It wasn't a long time, but it consumed a lot of his strength. Laugh. You could still laugh? Jingwan was angry and anxious. Wan, you're not angry anymore. Of course I can laugh. Who told you I'm not angry? Looking at him, it was as if he was using the trick of injuring himself. Jingwan hated him so much that she wanted to slap him. You're still angry. Then, do you want some more? Again? Do you want to die of pain? Or do you want me to die of heartache? Why was this bastard always so irritating? Okay. We won't do it. Don't talk about death. I don't like it. Then you hurt yourself. Do I like it? Ah, Yuan, you hurt yourself, but my heart hurts. Don't play like this in the future, no matter what you want to do. I don't care if you're teaching people or just itching to play, but you should at least take care of yourself. Otherwise, even if it's some big plan, I may stop you from doing it. Okay, there won't be a next time. I promise. Seeing Jingwan like this, how could Li Hongyuan not feel heartache? The feeling of fighting with He Zhihai before has faded. Jingwan was still concerned about Li Hongyuan's injury. She didn't care about how she looked now and called Gong Jiu in. Gong Jiu didn't look sideways. He just seriously treated Li Hongyuan's wound. As for some indescribable marks, he ignored them. After everything was taken care of, Jingwan opened her mouth again. Wang ya, did you do it on purpose just now? Don't tell me you don't know the effect of that medicine. Wan, you've wronged me. I really didn't know the effect of that medicine was so powerful. Jingwan glanced at Gong Jiu. Gong Jiu, you're also a blockhead. Your master doesn't know, but you must know. He asked you to use it, so you used it. Don't you know how to measure it yourself? Originally, he wanted to be in the background and wait for his master's order to let him go out. In the end, Wang Fei took out her anger on him. He was shot while lying down. Don't think he didn't know that his master was just passing the blame. But, as a shadow guard, even if it's a thing of the past, they still have to take the blame for their master. In all kinds of ways. This subordinate knows his mistake. Chapter 385. Gong Jiu, who had blocked his mistress's heart, was sent away. Outside in the corridor, he met Fu Rong, who was wearing a veil. She did this not because she cared about her appearance, but because she didn't want to dirty her mistress's eyes. According to Jingwan, she didn't care. Before she got married, she had seen her sister-in-law's face many times. But Fu Rong refused with a smile. According to her, her mistress's kindness was not a reason for her to not follow the rules. In the end, before she served Jingwan, everything she experienced was different from ordinary people. Deep in her heart, she was somewhat sensitive. Compared to others, she was more afraid of doing the wrong thing. Therefore, it was inevitable that she would be more cautious. In this situation, Jingwan didn't know how to deal with it. In the end, she let her be. She also told the other maidservants that they didn't need to be special in front of Fu Rong. Only when she felt that she was the same as the people around her and completely dispelled the shadow hidden in the bottom of her heart could she be considered a real new life. Gong Jiu followed his duty. I have a lot of good medicine that can remove scars. Even if it can't remove scars, it can make them fade a lot. If you want, come find me. I will prepare the medicine for you. Thank you, Gongzi. This servant doesn't feel that there is anything wrong. Gongzi doesn't need to worry about this servant. In this regard, Gong Jiu didn't care. Do as you wish. Whenever you want, you could come find me. He rolled up his sleeves and left with his hands behind his back. Fu Rong didn't have any emotional fluctuations and continued to quietly complete her task. Inside the room, after such a thing, Li Hongyuan's body was covered in sweat. Obviously, he couldn't take a bath during this time. Jingwan asked someone to bring water and personally wiped his body. Compared to noble consort Su, Jingwan was much more violent. She only avoided the wound, but the rest of her body was still filled with anger and was venting her anger. There were even several times when she wanted to directly hit Li Hongyuan's face. In fact, when she was finally done, it seemed that she really wanted to do so. Li Hongyuan looked at the stuff on his face and thought, why is she still angry? Sigh, this woman is really hard to coax. However, no matter how hard it was to coax her, she was still his wife. No matter how hard it was to coax her, he had to coax her. Otherwise, if Wang was unhappy, he would be unhappy too. After he finished speaking, Li Hanyuan didn't move for a long time. He put his hands on his hips and just watched. Therefore, when Li Hanyuan took off the mask on his face, he saw his wife staring straight at him. Her expression was not very good. Li Hanyuan was inexplicably shocked. He threw the towel aside and reached out to pull Jingwan into his arms. Jingwan hurriedly put her hand on his shoulder, afraid that she would touch his wound. Then, she hit him angrily. "Who told you to touch me? Let go of me." Li Hanyuan didn't let go at all. He let her sit on his lap and rubbed his chin on her shoulder. "My wife, if I don't touch you, am I supposed to touch an outsider?" He was obviously deliberately twisting her meaning. Jingwan was so angry that she hit him again. Wanwan's temper is getting worse and worse. Think about it. Before we got married, she accepted more gifts. Even if she was angry with me, she wouldn't go against me. Now, she hits people for no reason. She's so fierce. Li Hanyuan chuckled and complained. "What? Do you like someone who's well-behaved in front of you? Then I'm sorry, the one you're holding now has been spoiled by you. She only knows how to be lawless and doesn't know how to behave. If you don't like her and are unhappy, just throw her away and find someone else." "How easy is that?" Jingwan said coldly. Li Hanyuan opened his mouth and bit her red lips. "Even if she's spoiled, it's because I spoiled her. No matter what other people think, I still like her. How can I bear to throw her away? You have to know that I spent a lot of effort to spoil her so much that she's throwing a little temper. You're not allowed to say something like finding someone else in the future. Even if you're angry, you can't say it. I don't like it. I really don't like it. If you dare to say it again, I'm afraid that I'll really make you unable to get out of bed for 3 days." Jingwan's nose was dry and her eyes were not very comfortable. She knew that she was becoming more and more delicate. Other people were still fine and rational, but there was no other way. She couldn't control her emotions at all. Like this, she was afraid that she really couldn't leave this man. Jingwan hugged him, but her body still subconsciously avoided the wounds on his body. She bit his shoulder twice, but not as hard as usual, leaving only 2 bite marks. "This is your purpose, isn't it? Spoiling me so much that I can't leave you no matter what, right?" Li Hanyuan patted her head and smiled a little proudly. "That's right. I want to spoil you so much that no one else can't stand your delicateness. You'll be picky with everyone else. You can only live comfortably by my side." Jingwan snorted twice. "Then you have to continue to work hard. You're still far from that step. Let me tell you, I'm not someone who can be bought off by luxurious food and clothes." I know. Our Wan is the pickiest. Nothing that could capture her heart would ever be an external object." Jingwan hugged his neck, but her body was slightly bent. It was obvious that she would be uncomfortable. Li Hanyuan wanted to adjust her posture, but Jingwan didn't let him. "Don't treat your injury lightly. Be honest. It's really nothing. This injury is completely negligible compared to Wan's unhappiness." Jingwan raised her head and looked at him with slightly red eyes. "You did it on purpose. You deliberately tortured yourself to make me feel uncomfortable so that I'll forgive you. Then, the next time something similar happens, you'll still hurt yourself like this and then do the same thing again." Wan's words are a little harsh. Seeing you feel uncomfortable is more painful than anything else. When you cried like that just now, it was like cutting my heart with a blunt knife. I really promise you that this kind of thing will never happen again. So, don't be angry, okay? There had to be a limit to what he could do. He couldn't let his heart hurt and hurt his body. "Okay, if you're more obedient, I won't be angry. Then Wan, tell me, what do you want your husband to do? I'll listen to you." Li Hongyuan's smile was shallow, but gentle and doting. "Let go. Hurry up and put on your clothes. Don't you see what kind of weather it is? Don't be injured and catch a cold." This time, Li Hanyuan was very obedient. He let go of Jingwan and quickly put on his clothes. Jingwan fixed his hair. Okay, it was purely symbolic. Whether it was dressing herself or helping others, compared to Li Hanyuan, Jingwan was far worse. "It's inconvenient to bathe, but your hair needs to be washed. It's all wet with sweat." She turned back to have someone prepare hot water in the clean room. Wan, are you going to do it yourself? Just let Muin serve you." Jingwan coolly glanced at him. "I'm not willing." "What? Do you dislike Xie for being clumsy and not being able to serve our Jin Wang well? Don't worry, forget about other things, but this isn't a problem. When I was 10 years old, I washed grandmother's hair. Other people can't catch up to me. Li Hongyuan tickled her nose, little heartless. Do you not know if your husband loves you dearly or dislikes you? Jingwan laughed. I know. It's me who wants to wash Yuan's hair. It's fine, it's not a big deal. Do you really want me to become someone who stretches out my hand for clothes and opens my mouth for food and not do anything? In the long run, I'll really become a 9th grade handicap. 9th grade handicap? Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows. I just don't know how to do anything. You're considered a noble girl born in a prestigious family, and now you're Ben Wang's Wang Fei. Isn't it normal that you don't know how to do anything? So what if you're a 9th grade handicap? Jingwan wanted to be speechless. Even a young lady from a prestigious family was far from being this good. Where did this man want to pamper her? He clearly wanted to spoil her until she was ruined. At that time, old Luo Foreign's health wasn't very good, and it wasn't convenient for her to wash her face and rinse her mouth. Jingwan also had 2 reclining chairs made according to the ones she used to wash her hair in her previous life. In the end, that thing gradually spread in Qi and Fu. Among the dowry furniture that was made for Jingwan, 2 sets were specially made. Now, not only was it popular in the Ministry of Personnel after Jingwan agreed, it was also popular in Jinqin Wang Fu. The one that Jingwan had people make wasn't that flat. It was relatively slanted and could only be considered as sitting or lying down, not sleeping or reclining. Counting it, this was indeed the first time that Jingwan washed Li Hongyuan's hair. In the past, at most, she would casually wash it when they were bathing together. Li Hongyuan had to admit that Jingwan was indeed very good at this point. Perhaps it was because she was taking care of her grandmother. That was an elderly patient. Of course, she would be attentive, gentle, and even give an appropriate massage. Li Hongyuan was so comfortable that he almost fell asleep. Wang Ye, Prince Rue is outside the door and wants to see you. Gong Momo gently lifted the curtain of the clean room and said softly, I won't see him. If he comes later, there's no need to report to Ben Wang. I'll forgive him a few more times. The meaning couldn't be more obvious. Just like little gangster he before. As for when to see him, it completely depended on Li Hongyuan's mood. As for whether Prince Rue would stop coming after being refused the door, even if he really didn't come, to be honest, it had nothing to do with Jinqin Wang Fu. Li Hongyuan was rather low-key this time. He only brought 1 person, 1 or 2 ordinary small carriages, and a coachman. Being refused the door was also within Li Hongming's expectations. He had also mentally prepared himself. Therefore, if he couldn't do it today, he would come tomorrow. In any case, 1 day at a time, he was bound to achieve his goal. He stood in front of Jinqin Wang Fu for a moment to ensure that there were people from other Fu who could see him, but also not to the extent of attracting a crowd to watch him leave. He wanted to let people know his sincerity, but also not to the extent of making people feel that he was forcing them. However, this little trick was nothing in Li Hongyuan's eyes. Moreover, he didn't care about his reputation and didn't mind being talked about. As for Li Hongming's sincerity, it wasn't within the scope of Li Hongyuan's concern. He only wanted to achieve his goal in the end. At this time, compared to Li Hongyuan's tenderness, little gangster, he was much more miserable. Not to mention the whole family circling around him, showing him all kinds of care. Even his mother, grandmother, and sisters-in-law silently shed tears as they looked at the wounds on his body. This was purely a dream. One after another, they came to ridicule him. There was even someone who viciously patted his wounds twice. Seeing him grimace, they said, "Serves you right," and then clapped their hands and left. That was called unrestrained. As for those hideous wounds, in an ordinary family, the womenfolk might not even dare to look at them. If their own family's younger generation was like this, it could be said that they would cry to the heavens. In He family, it was very calm. From the master to the servant girls, they wouldn't even bat an eyelid. Towards this kind of miserable, this kind of heartless and cold family, He Jinghai didn't have any reaction. He was even happy as if he got a big treasure. He was foolishly happy. The old military doctor who applied medicine for him shook his head. Little Gongzi was valiant, but in some aspects, it was really a headache. If this temperament didn't change, he simply couldn't lead troops. One person's valiant was always limited. In the end, it was a pity. After Jinghai put on his clothes, not to mention resting on the bed, he was still alive and kicking. He directly rushed to the martial arts field. He took a weapon and waved it vigorously, or the wounds on his body. The wounds would burst open and not heal easily. Or those. Ignore all of them. When other people knew about this situation, the veins on their forehead jumped. Then they felt helpless. This was not the first time this kind of thing happened. As the head of the family, old madam, he was the calmest. Someone go to Jin Wangfu and ask for 2 doses of medicine. Others were silent, but their hearts were in agreement. To be able to make people stop and also to speed up the healing of the wounds, it couldn't be better. As for the sequelae, he who let the family have a heart of stone. All right, the main thing was that they were used to seeing life and death. Losing an arm or breaking a leg was a common occurrence. It was just a little bit of pain, that's all. And Jin Wangfu was especially generous, giving a lot of medicine for both internal and external use. Internal injuries were naturally to be taken orally, pills. External injuries were to be applied externally. Medicinal powders, sufficient quantities were naturally in case of emergency. As for whether this was Jin Wangfu's special care, the He family did not need to know. Jinghai was personally brought down from the martial arts field by his own mother and grandmother. No matter how undisciplined and out of control he was at this time, he was as obedient as a kitten. It's just that when Jinghai saw the medicine from Jin Wangfu, he thought of the terrible pain. The shadow in his heart grew so big that he wanted to run away. And the head of He family seemed to have foresight. He held Fa and blocked the door. Today you dare to run out of this room and try? If you go out, you can still fight with Jin Wangfu. I will write my name upside down. This simply pinched his weak spot. Compared to the pain, not being able to fight with Jin Wangfu would only make him suffer more. Grandmother, that this medicine is too overbearing. My wounds always heal quickly, so can I not use it? Old madam, he sneered and didn't say a word. He Xiao gangster succumbed to his grandmother's abuse of power and became He Xiao pitiful. He went back with grievance and then started to take off his clothes. The old military doctor also heard about the power of this medicine, but in the end, he never saw it or tried it himself. But he had seen the effect of this medicine, so he was eager to try it. He smelled a lot of medicine, but there was still a lot of medicine left. Even if he took it back to study, there might not be any result. But now it's not the time to think about this. He should first see the effect with his own eyes. Jinghai couldn't stop retreating. Facing the old military doctor who was laughing, he felt an unprecedented fear. There's actually something that can make Xiao Gongzi afraid. It must be a good thing. Facing He Xiao gangster many times, even if the old military doctor had a bodhisattva's heart, there would be a time when he became black-bellied. Jinghai was speechless. What do you mean that the thing he's afraid of is a good thing? Even if he used to give the military doctor headaches, but he shouldn't be treated like this, right? Obviously, the old military doctor was also very scary. But in He Xiao gangster's eyes, he was not a good thing. However, He Xiao gangster didn't dare to talk back at this time. He simply closed his eyes, clenched his teeth, and clenched his fists. Before he could do anything, the blue veins on his body bulged. He looked like he was facing death calmly. Other people were even more interested in this medicine. The old military doctor's eyes were shining. Then, he started to treat Jinghai's long and deep wound without any hesitation. He wasn't as careful as Gong Jiao. Not long after the powder was applied, He Xiao gangster's miserable howl was heard. It was deafening. Ordinary pain was nothing to Jinghai. It was completely within his tolerance range. Most of the time, he could ignore it. But when he really couldn't stand it, he didn't care about his face. And he wasn't afraid that his family would worry about him. Therefore, he didn't feel any pressure at all. Seeing Jinghai's miserable condition, the family members were a bit shocked. They even felt pity for him. Why don't we not use it? It was said that the eldest sister-in-law was like a mother. He Jinghai was only a few years older than her son. Use it, why not use it? Anyway, this place hurts, and so does the whole body. It can't be that the more wounds there are, the more pain there is. It's good to let him feel more pain now. Only when he knows the pain, even when the pain is deep in his bones, will he be more careful in the future. Only then will he use his brain more and not be like a madman who doesn't care about anything. Madam, he said calmly. When the others heard this, they all fell silent. Madam He's words weren't directed at Li Hongyuan. She was talking about the battlefield in He Jinghai. Just as Madam He said, when he really fought, he was a madman. On the battlefield, he was a madman. His combat strength increased, but he didn't kill many enemies. On the contrary, sometimes he only cared about himself and would bring trouble to his own side. Moreover, he didn't care much about his injuries. With his combat strength, he shouldn't be injured, but he was injured almost every time. This kind of situation was actually very dangerous. The He family members didn't want him to die inexplicably on the battlefield one day. After all, as long as the enemy understood his personality, they could completely scheme against him. As long as he went deep into the enemy's camp, no matter how much he killed, he would be surrounded and killed by the sea of people. Old Witch, in the future, whenever this evil creature is injured, no matter if it's external or internal injuries, use this medicine. At most, we'll throw away this old face and go to Jin Wangfu to ask for more medicine. He Jinwei said coldly. Compared to the possibility of this evil creature losing his life for no reason one day, the pain of looking at him now was not worth it at all. Thus, little tyrant, he was destined to have some tragedies in the future. In the next few days, there was basically nothing much to do because Jiangnan had already dealt with it. Not many people were beheaded directly, but there were many people who were locked up in prison and waiting to be exiled or squatted down. Naturally, there were more people who were demoted. Of course, there were also some who were transferred. The most special one was Governor Su. He originally had nothing to do with the Jiangnan salt corruption case, but because he was transferred and went to the coastal area, although the sea trade at Qiyuan was not developed, it was not closed off. Thus, although it was not as good as Jiangnan, it was still a place with rich oil and water. Thus, most people thought that it was just a normal transfer. In the entire officialdom of Jiangnan, those who were not dealt with were basically officials who were 5th rank and below. Thus, although they tried their best to control it, there were still some movements. Fortunately, the new official arrived in time, and it was believed that it would be stabilized soon. As the saying goes, when you pull out the radish, the mud will come out with it. However, Lu Qingdi's tolerance was limited now, so he did not deal with anyone in the capital. However, because of some specious words in the imperial court, the courtiers were all nervous and conscientious and did not dare to act rashly. On the surface, there were no losses, but the losses in the dark were too great. The loss of manpower was secondary, but the loss of money was the most important thing. It would definitely make many people vomit blood secretly. Perhaps it was not obvious now, but as time went by, those who were used to being extravagant and whose main source of wealth was from Jiangnan would definitely be strapped for cash. At that time, no one knew what would happen. Li Hongyuan said that he would take away some people's money, but when he really took action, it was absolutely terrifying. They were bullied and suffered losses, but it was Lu Qingdi who gave them this. None of them dared to say anything, and they all pretended to be obedient like quails. And those who were not involved, but knew all the ways and means, all kept silent. What was different from others was that these people's hearts were very calm, or perhaps they even had the mentality of watching a play. And there were also some people who were slightly different. There were people who were related to Peishur, or family members who were related to Peishur by marriage, or disciples of Peishur's great scholars. However, because these people were in the capital, they understood Jin Qinhuang's situation better. Thus, regardless of whether Peishur's matter was related to Jin Qinhuang or not, they could not and did not dare to do anything or say anything. If Peishur did not have so many negative things, even if they risked danger, they would still say a few words. For morality, for friendship, for face, the one who did not say or do not do anything would be them. Pei had such a bad reputation. Cutting off ties was simply natural. Even if it was brought up, they could still speak righteously, and even say that their previous friendship with Pei was a disgrace, that they did not recognize people clearly, and even say that they were the victims who were deceived. Because these people all shrank back. Naturally, they also restrained the younger generation of their family. After all, at this time, if something happened, a small matter could become a big matter. Perhaps Lu Qingdi, who was still angry, would not let it go. The new and old debts would be settled together, and then he would kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Who knew what the outcome would be? As a result, the atmosphere in the capital was very strict, and the public security was very good. Of course, the businesses of brothels, pleasure boats, and dance halls were also seriously affected. At this time, a small matter could become the topic of conversation after tea and meal. There was no other way. It was too boring. Under these circumstances, Prince Rue went to Jin Xinwang Fu every day to report, and every time he was met with a closed door. Even if it was not conspicuous, it would become conspicuous. How did Prince Rue offend Jin Xinwang? Li Hongming was questioned whether it was true or false, or whether it was ridicule or schadenfreude. On the surface, there was helplessness and the specifics were vague, but in his heart, there was hatred. Not only did he hate these people, but also Li Hongyuan. In his view, his attitude was already so low. Even if Li Hongyuan was pretentious, there should be a limit. This time, he humiliated him again and again. Originally, because of Mu Fei's face, he did not bicker with him, but now, he fiercely remembered it, and when he ascended the throne in the future, perhaps it was because there was no other way, Prince Rue said to him, "The two children quite like 6 daimai. I'll take the 2 children to see 6 daimai ba." Want sincerity? Want sincerity? Since a direct route was not possible, they could only take a roundabout route. Jingwan took Prince Rue's 2 little Junju to play. Not long after, the 2 children heard that they were going to be taken to Jin Xinwang Fu and appeared very happy. Prince Rue's heart was complicated. The 2 children liked 6th aunt, but as parents, they had to use this innocence to achieve their own goals. If it was known, who knew what they would think? Even if they did not know, they were actually living in a lie. Wasn't it another kind of sorrow? At the same time, Prince Rue's feelings towards Jingwan were also very complicated. She envied her similarly carefree days, envied that she did not have to be careful in front of noble consort Su. Even if she angered noble consort Su, she did not have to do anything. She also envied that she was protected and pampered by her husband. However, Jingwan's mouth was similarly unforgiving. Even if Prince Rue stood in her own position and said a few words, she would be unceremoniously retorted back. In this way, it was really somewhat difficult to describe. In fact, the more complicated thing was about the 2 children. She thought that she had done everything a mother should do. She knew that she could not let the children be too close to the wet nurse, so she often took them by her side. Sometimes she might be a bit strict, but most of the time, she was not particularly restrained. These 2 children were actually not particularly close to her, because after returning from the palace that time, she tried to take the 2 children to play, but they were very reserved and even felt disbelief from them. At that time, she actually wanted to cry, but in the end, she held it back. She learned from Jingwan and used all her patience to guide them. Finally, she achieved results. At the beginning, when she heard her daughter say Mu Fei actually doesn't know how to do this, she was stiff. Later on, she could calmly say, "Then Jier can teach Mu Fei, okay?" Looking at her daughter's proud face and seriously and intimately teach her, Prince Rue almost cried again. The feeling was completely opposite. In just a few days, she only took a little time to play with them in person every day, but the relationship between the mother and daughter quickly became intimate. It was all because of Luo Jingwan. Without giving an invitation, Prince Rue directly took the 2 children to the door. The reason was that the 2 children missed their 6th aunt. Li Hongyuan was unhappy and wanted to send them away directly. Jingwan's eyes were a bit cold, but she did not follow Li Hongyuan's idea in the end. If such little children were rejected at the door, they would definitely think that they were not liked by others. Perhaps it would cause psychological harm. Therefore, Jingwan asked people to welcome them in and prepare the children's favorite things, no matter it was food or toys. Seeing Jingwan, the two children's eyes were bright, but they still pretended to greet Jingwan. Good morning, sixth aunt. Jingwan did not bring her own emotions to the children. She squatted down and hugged the two little girls. Oh, you two are really good babies. I like you very much. She also rubbed their foreheads. The two little girls giggled. Seeing this scene, Prince Rue thought that she couldn't do it to this extent. There was a faint sense of guilt in her heart, but she didn't know who it was for. Before she married, she was also naive and unaffected. But after entering Jin Xinhuang Fu for so many years, all her beautiful hopes were shattered. For this and that, she became a schemer. At the same time, she was numb and thought that this life would be like this. She never thought that there would be times when there would be fluctuations. Jingwan got up and pulled the children with each hand. Third sister-in-law is here. Come and sit. Prince Rue smiled, but that smile was a bit forced. Jingwan's attitude was not cold, and her words were not harsh or sarcastic. She knew that it was because of the two children. Jingwan was not worried about her, but the children. The relationship between adults had a great impact on the children. She deeply felt this when she was in her maternal family. The mother used the children, but the opponent took care of the children with all her heart. How ironic. The place to receive guests was set up in the courtyard. Although the weather was getting colder, the courtyard was still thriving. It seemed to be better than other houses. Seeing the things that Jingwan prepared for the two children, there were no dangerous things to play with. The food was delicious and easy to digest. She put in a lot of effort. Jingwan first played with the two little girls for a while. Hey, Sixth Aunt has something to say to your Mufei. You two go play by yourselves first, okay? There are treasures in the courtyard. If you find it, Sixth Aunt will give it to you, okay? She then instructed the servants to keep an eye on them and not let them run around too much. In addition, there was no need to restrain them. The two little girls happily went on a treasure hunt. Sixth sister-in-law is considerate. Jingwan still looked at the direction of the two children. Children run and jump, and their bodies are better. And children are hot-tempered, so you don't need to put on clothes too quickly. It can be said that they were totally different. They all said that it was more than the other brothers added together. Most likely, it was true. 5 million taels for Jin Xinhuang Fu might really not be a big deal. However, Jin Xinhuang Fu didn't need to cultivate its own power. No matter how luxurious the entire Fu was, it couldn't be compared to the money that other people needed to invest in their power. Jin Xinhuang Fu didn't understand, so they naturally thought that Prince Rue Fu wouldn't be unable to take out this amount of money. However, they couldn't tell the truth. The world belonged to the one on the dragon throne. Treating it as a son, cultivating power, in private, they would turn a blind eye to it. But if it was exposed in the open, was it seeking death or seeking death? Moreover, if those things were exposed, it would definitely not be within the tolerance range of the one on the dragon throne. Therefore, they could only grit their teeth and endure. All right, I'll go back and tell Prince. Jingwan nodded. The proper business is finished. Next, Imperial Saw can be more casual. In Jin Xinhuang Fu, you don't need to be so tense. Not to mention the proper business. In this Jin Xinhuang Fu, even if it was the enemy's territory, it could indeed make people more relaxed. More relaxed than in their own Fu. How laughable. The two young ladies' foreheads were faintly covered with sweat. They came back somewhat dejectedly. Sixth Aunt, we didn't find the treasure. You two little girls don't seem to know the value of goods. In your sixth aunt's courtyard, any random flower or plant is a treasure. Therefore, this courtyard is full of treasures. Prince Rue faintly pointed at them and smiled. The two young ladies widened their eyes. Sixth Aunt, is it true? Yes. Jingwan smiled and nodded. Although I didn't find it, but Sixth Aunt can still give each of you a stalk. Go choose it yourself. When you leave, I'll have someone send it back to you. The two young ladies all looked at their Mufei at the same time. Prince Rue nodded. Your sixth aunt's flowers and plants are very good. They can't be asked for outside. Now that there's a chance, you don't need to be polite with her. Then can each of us have 2 stalks? The small one stretched out 2 chubby little fingers. You sly girl, greedy and insatiable. Prince Rue pretended to be angry. Yes, yes, don't listen to your Mufei. It's just one more stalk. 6th Anne is happy. She smiled and rubbed the little girl's head. Go choose. The 2 young ladies didn't understand, but they weren't greedy and didn't ask for the biggest stalk. But because of this, they really did choose something good. Jingwan was happy. The 2 little darlings have good eyes. She went back and called people to prepare. 2 stalks were directly brought in pots and just needed to be moved away. The other 2 were slightly more troublesome because it wasn't a good season for transplanting, so they couldn't hurt the roots and had to leave a lot of soil. 6th sister-in-law, you don't need to spoil them like this. How can it be spoiling? You have to keep your word. You can't coax them just because they are children. Prince Rue didn't say anything more. When all the flowers and plants were ready, a servant came to report that Prince Rue came to pick up Prince Rue and the young commandery princess. That's good. I won't keep 3rd royal sister-in-law. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.